whether it's the left, which will call the right fascist, or the fascists, which will call them non-Hindu or Maoists or, I don't know, innumerable things. You yourself in an interview recently said Barkha Dutt, Romila Thapar and
Yes, I did.
Irfan Habib should leave the country.
I
and
didn't
not.
say that.
You said
You
were asked rhetorically,
right.
who are the three that should leave the country and never come back, and you picked these, you know?
Yes,
Now,
and I gave my reasons also.
Do you, one minute, let me finish my
you
question.
shouldn't cite Ubaya Bharati's example if this is going to be a line of questioning, then you'll have to give me an answer to it.
When protesters are not even allowed to be in Jantar Mantar, but they must now go out of sight so that their protest is not heard. When Parliament does not ask for committees.
Does the state have the right to prove at the very least that not all protests are organic and genuine? Yes or no?
And I'm sorry, this is becoming I have to step back a little bit, draw you in here.
Right. Are you saying that the government has no right to prosecute such people merely because they happen to be protectors of free speech and they are in exempted categories such as journalists?
No,
Yes.
what I, as a journalist and a woman and a citizen,
Right.
definitely disagree with is the right of the government to frame people in certain contexts and in certain languages, and that could be any government, and that cuts across many dispensations. Right now it's the center that we're discussing. They'll say, we have this knowledge, but we don't need to put it in the public space. Okay. And they often do that.
Did you ask this question before 2014?
Before 2014?
Yes.
Very
Did you
much
ask this
so.
question?
Very much so.
In what context?
In the context of Binayak Sen.
Did you ask it in the context of Section 66A?
But wait, Sai, you're dragging me down specifics.
No, you've asked me a question. Now I have.
No,
now
hold
the
on.
floodgates have opened. I have the right to respond.
I feel like you've gotten at this point.
Saurabh, let me
I have to answer this point.
Which is that when you say that society should engage with society and with government, in this context, Sai, and I'm asking you, obviously, you know, I'm not trying to make you the spokesperson, but why don't you refract a certain view of the world?
Right.
Is that in our society today, and that's why I brought up this Mandan Mishra and this kind of dialogue we are having, this good faith dialogue is just not possible outside in the public. Whether it's the left, which will call the right fascist, or the fascists, which will call them non-Hindu or Maoists or, I don't know, innumerable things. You yourself in an interview recently said Barkha Dutt, Romila Thapar and Irfan Habib should leave the country.
I didn't say that.
You said you were asked rhetorically, who are the three that should leave the country and never come back, and you picked these, you know?
Yes, and I gave my reasons also, and I stand by those reasons.
Right,
yes.
But just the fact that we are asking each other to leave the country, we are asking each other to be un-Hindu or Hindu.
I didn't.
Do you, one minute, let me finish my question.
You shouldn't cite Ubaya Bharati's example if this is going to be a line of questioning, then you'll have to give me an answer to it.
No, let me just finish my question. When you are asking society to engage, those who disagree with government, or those who disagree with the heteronormative, or those who disagree with the majority, would you concede that it's very worrying that in a society to engage, protest should be allowed without it being called, you know, foreign hands funded or anti-national or ready for sedition or being pushed into jail? How should society dialogue when protesters are not even allowed to be in Jantar Mantar, but they must now go out of sight so that their protest is not heard? When Parliament does not ask for committees, when Parliament does not allow for discussion, when the opposition itself is discredited, you know? How will society dialogue? Do you think this is a crisis?
Is it your case that all protests are genuine?
Yes, I would presume until there's extreme empirical evidence.
So, hold on.
To the contrary.
Does the state have the right to prove at the very least that not all protests are organic and genuine? Yes or no?
May I answer that without a yes or no, because we're trying to not be binary.
Thank you. At least then I should be extended the very same courtesy.
Yes.
Yes.
So my point is, and I'm sorry if this is becoming I have to step back a little bit, draw you in here.
Right.
Sai?
It's rather like watching the volley in Wimbledon that we're all missing.
Yeah, please go on.
Sai, I'm going to bring Saurabh in here to answer this actually, but when you ask that question, when you ask that question, I would in fact say, as a journalist, woman, citizen, any other identity I wear, I would deeply urge the government, media, and everyone else to provide empirical evidence before they do any name calling that is currently going on in our public life.
Okay. So when they launch prosecutions, which is well within their power.
Sorry?
When the government launches prosecutions with respect to certain protesters, or even journalists for that matter, who they know for a fact or they have material to believe have not exactly been true to Indian interests. Are you saying that the government has no right to prosecute such people merely because they happen to be protectors of free speech and they are in exempted categories such as journalists?
No,
Yes.
what I, as a journalist and a woman and a citizen, definitely disagree with is the right of the government to frame people in certain contexts and in certain languages, and that could be any government, and that cuts across many dispensations. Right now, it's the center that we're discussing. They'll say, we have this knowledge, but we don't need to put it in the public space. And they often do that.
Did you ask this question before 2014?
Before 2014?
Yes.
Very
Did you
much
ask
so.
this question?
Very much so.
In what context?
In the context of Binayak Sen.
Did you ask it in the context of Section 66A?
Yes.
When?
But wait, Sai, you're dragging me down specifics.
No, you've asked me a question. Now I have...
No, hold on.
66A. I have the right to respond.
I feel like you should cut in at this point.
Saurabh, let me
I have to answer this point because since you've asked me this question, let me answer.
Sorry, maybe we can reframe the thing. You mentioned 66A.
Would you share with the audience what
66A? 66A of the Information Technology Act was a section that permitted prosecution of material electronically propagated that had a tendency of causing annoyance between people, or two people. It was misused very often, including when some statement was made against Thakre or against various leaders. Now, the only reason I wanted to intervene, and then I let you have it at each other.
No,
is a point that we sometimes forget that politics is the same. It doesn't matter whether it's the BJP or the Congress or party A, party B, party C.
That's
66A, just to remind the audience, was brought in by the Congress regime when it was part of the UPA.
Defended by the BJP.
And then, yes, when it is finally challenged in courts in 2015, it is defended by the BJP government.
Absolutely.
Because every government wants to suppress a citizen.
Correct.
That is what they want.
I am so happy.
That is absolutely what they want. It is the courts. Now we disagree on the role of the courts.
I'm happy to
It is
answer
the
the
courts
question
who have to step in to protect the citizens.
Right.
We must have every freedom. You know, as a society, we have given up on having freedoms. We've kind of grown up in a milieu where we cede to the community, which starts from our family first, to the larger family first, all our rights. We just don't value our freedoms. We don't see them as important. We don't see them as worth fighting for. And I think we have to start that, remembering that every government is every party, every politics, all authority will want to wrest your freedoms and exercise control over them because there are institutions of control.
That is the nature of power.
We don't need to go to Foucault and
go. Correct. Now, if that is the nature of power, and now I must have my turn to respond, here's the question. Prior to 2014, and when there were issues of 66A and several such provisions, when was the last time, or at least during that particular period, words such as fascist, majoritarian, anti-free speech were used in the context of the dispensation then? So I agree, the nature of power is that it's capricious, it will only seek 100% loyalty. But the funny part is, those who are expected to call out such people conveniently changed their positions before 2015 and post 2014. And I have to ask this question. If journalists have a higher degree of responsibility, or let's say higher degree of protection because they are in the business of enabling free speech, what would you say of a journalist who goes after a person who criticizes her in a suit for defamation or in criminal prosecution for pointing out the unfairness of a reportage in the context of an incident that concerns national security? And I refer specifically to the incident of Mr. Chaitanya Kunte being prosecuted by Ms. Dutt for defamation. What is your position going to be on that particular issue?
So,
governments prosecuting people for violating the law is within their remit. We are being told that free speech is elastic when it comes to journalists. What do you make of a person who says that I have the right to prosecute this person because he's criticized me or he's defamed me? Then what is your position on that?
Sai, I'll say it absolutely categorically. And unfortunately, I've become the discussant here, but I'm telling you categorically that I am on record, contrary to my tribe, to say that because journalists and media have so much power, I absolutely endorse and absolutely believe that the public must have recourse for defamation cases against the media.
What about journalists against public for criticizing for their work?
And I absolutely think that right now, journalists are overstepping the line a lot.
Always.
On this case, I would say that it is wrong. I think as long as you have the right to put out any public story, anybody has the recourse. If they feel injured by your actions, they have the right to come for recourse
for the
against you.
concession.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Why certain things become nuanced is in the past, it's been to protect journalists from large corporations.
One final point, and I'll leave it at that. We are not looking at stifling of free speech. The fact is, a voice such as mine, representing the worldview that I do, wouldn't have found a space on any platform prior to 2014, and that is a reality that I've lived with.
So, okay,
So today when someone comes and gives me these lectures and gives me the spiel on free speech, on Vad and Samvad, so it's mighty convenient. Times have really changed. The Overton window has seriously changed because people did not do that before 2014.
If I may step in there again, because I feel I should. It's correct that maybe a conservative voice would not have gotten place prior to 2014. A fact which is unfortunate, a fact which is deeply troubling. But that does not mean that having got that voice, every other voice is pushed off the table.
Where is it? There has to be some evidence to back that particular statement. Where is it?
I'm not saying that
Which platform has been stifled after 2014?
I'm not saying that you are saying that. What I'm saying is we must remember as citizens that free speech is valuable because it protects all of us. And the question is, what is the content of that free speech is not something that can be judged unless it causes harm. That's a classic liberalism. It isn't very much. It's liberalism 101. Everyone should get access to free speech. Every act which harms, including defamation, needs to be curtailed. These are basic things. Sometimes we get just so carried away with the polemics of it, with the extremes, that we forget that the vast majority of people today started self-censoring, both from worry from the left or the right. And self-censorship is possibly far more worrying than governmental interference. The government really doesn't need to come in and stop you from speaking very much. The fear of what the outrage will be, both from the left and the right, that's sufficient.
My point has been that we have discovered the values of liberalism when the shoe has been on the other foot. Thank you.
I was a lawyer who challenged Section 66A. So I was against 66A, both for both parts of government.
Sai, it's good you asked this question because as a journalist, and you can go back and look at Tehelka's history, personally, we did a cover story on 66A, very, very critical of the Congress government, and he said the same. I just want to pose one question to both of you to concede and then let's go for dinner. Right. You said before 2014, the liberals had a voice, conservatives didn't, and that's very fair. My question to you, and actually my anguish about this moment in our history and in our national life, is that when certain things are being articulated and new voices come, why is it such a revengeful voice? Can you not put forward positive voices, positive positions, without saying earlier we didn't have a voice, so now let's push these guys out of the frame and call them anti-national, anti-Hindu, etc., etc. You know that this vocabulary happens.
I'm so sorry. When I walk into certain institutions located out of Sonipat, I had posters actually saying, Brahmin, go back. This is the language that's been used. And these are institutions that have been posted institutions for liberalism in this country. I'm not naming that institution only out of decency. And this is a post-2014 phenomenon. This is as early as 2017, or rather as late as 2017. So when someone suddenly says that we are being edged out, or our position at the table is being taken away, I can only see that post-2014, the number of institutions which represent the worldview that you stand for have only mushroomed. They have not gone down. I haven't seen a single institution say closure sesame because of government action. It's actually mushroomed. On the contrary, I have seen more and more people releasing each other's books, despite the fact that they come from opposite ends of the ideological spectrum. So I haven't seen this. So I suspect that this is a grievance without a cause, because perhaps there is some kind of a brownie point that is sought to be scored here, that we are more liberal, look at this is a vengeful tone. Frankly speaking, I've said everything that I've said in a very composed tone only for one reason. Because I stand by the position that I've taken and I don't need to raise my voice to make my point. I have never been accused of that. On the contrary, there have been instances where my pieces, even post-2014, have been returned by left-of-center publications. When I said this article needs to be called out for its inaccuracies, they said, sorry, you won't get a voice. This has happened. This is post 2014. So it's not as if suddenly you've lost the power of your veto. You've always had it. You continue to have it.
Okay, let me end on this note. I would say that the question of individual liberty and conservatism is a question that, is important to all of us. It's something we should take home with us. I would say that I cringe at the fundamentalism of the left, and I mean that, Sai, and I'm saying it on record. I would love it if on record we could all say that we cringe, or if you cringe when the right expresses itself clumsily, angrily, and with name-calling. If you can say that on record, we would have arrived somewhere center. Saurav has already conceded that
I don't relate to the right. I'm not associated with the right. I represent the Indic view. I don't speak for them.
So when the Indic view speaks in a cringy way about those who don't agree with it, do you cringe?
Let me echo Mr. Kirpal here as a person who believes in free speech and as a reasonable person. Anybody who does that is wrong. Anybody who stifles the other person's point of view or takes away his ability to vent or her ability or their ability to vent their point of view, I do not agree with that particular position. I don't need to agree or disagree with anybody else specifically.